I can have someone as uneducated and lowly like you fired anytime I want. Keep that in mind." At the headquarters, Emily, who bosses around a place as the department head, hurled such harsh threats at me. The next day, President Johnson visited my department on an internal inspection. First and foremost, Emily greeted President Johnson with an almost servile eagerness. I felt like throwing up at the sight of Emily's flirty demeanor, so different from the tyrannical and arrogant face she shows to us subordinates. But then, the next moment, President Johnson spotted me and walked over to say something. The words he greeted me with and then the words that continued were utterly unexpected. Emily's eyes widened in shock and her face turned deathly pale in an instant. "I am Michael Sanders. At 28, I'm still quite a novice. This is a lesson I've learned through the experiences of my youth, which I'd like to share with you. I was born as an only child. My father ran his own company, and my mother was raised like a princess. In my early years, we were fairly well off. My father was too busy with his business to play with me, but I remember him being very affectionate when he was around. My mother, a full-time homemaker, was gentle and kind, and I was raised in a calm and peaceful atmosphere. In my faint childhood memories, we had a maid. The maid and my mother often took me to the local zoo or amusement park. These peaceful and elegant days continued until I started kindergarten. But one day during my kindergarten years, the company car carrying my father was involved in a head-on collision with a large truck. The driver died instantly, and my father, who was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, was barely hanging on to life. After the emergency treatment, my father somehow managed to cling to life, but remained in a critical condition, teetering on the edge between life and death for a long time. Over a month passed before his condition finally stabilized. However, he ended up almost completely bedridden and paralyzed on one side of his body. Inevitably, my father could no longer work and was forced into retirement. My father had built his company from scratch and was expanding it rapidly, so the regrets he must have felt at that moment are beyond comprehension. From then on, my father took on a tedious rehabilitation process, trying to improve his condition as much as possible. At home, my father needed assistance from my mother and hired helpers for everything, which must have been hard for him, but he never complained or showed weakness. Our family's lifestyle was now sustained by my father's savings and some assets. My mother, raised as a princess and physically frail, couldn't work outside while taking care of my father, so we had to manage with what we had. "Don't worry, we have enough savings and assets to keep us going for a while. Don't worry about money," my father reassured us, struggling to articulate his words. In this situation, I started elementary school and eventually became a middle schooler. Being fast on my feet, I excelled as a sprinter on the track team in middle school. With grades in the top 10 of my class, I went on to a public high school with the highest academic standards in our district. However, I had given up on the idea of going to college by the time I was in my first year of high school. I knew our family's finances, which had been maintained by depleting savings and assets since my elementary school days, were becoming strained. While we had enough for our daily lives, my father's medical expenses took a significant toll each year, and we needed to prioritize those funds. I didn't want to burden my family further by going to college, so I told them, "I don't want to go to college, I'm tired of studying," even though it was a lie. I knew that if I didn't say something like that, my parents would feel guilty for not being able to send their son to college. As a high school student, I didn't join any clubs. Instead, I worked part-time jobs to earn my allowance and cover school expenses. I wanted to lessen the burden on my family's finances. By my senior year, while everyone else in my honors class was preparing for college entrance exams, I was the only one starting to job search. Since going to college was the norm for everyone, my teachers weren't very helpful with my job hunt, They did write the recommendation letters I asked for, but for the most part I had to manage all the inquiries and arrangements with companies on my own. As a result, I received a job offer from a branch of a certain company I had hoped to join for specific reasons. Upon graduating from high school, I began working at this company as a member of the workforce. The company, though a branch of a certain corporation, was essentially treated like a subsidiary, positioned at the bottom of the group's hierarchy. During the job hunt, I had wanted to apply to the headquarters, but since the requirements stated educational background, college degree or higher, the only position available to me was at this branch. However, the branch where I was hired had good interpersonal relationships, and there was no enforced overtime work or other negative aspects, so I quickly grew to like my workplace. My job initially focused on route sales, but as I gained experience in my second and third years, I had more freedom to develop original products and explore new sales channels. As I continued to work, I found my job increasingly enjoyable and felt motivated. However, as I entered my fourth year at the company, an element began to disrupt a good atmosphere. An employee from the headquarters started to come to our branch for inspection, acting like an auditor. Although the inspection itself wasn't a bad thing, the attitude of this employee from the headquarters was horrendous, to say the least. This employee, Emily, came to our branch regularly for inspections. She was in her mid to late 20s, a few years older than me. Emily was tall, with a model-like figure, stunningly beautiful, and an elite graduate from a top university. Originally working for a foreign consulting firm right after graduating from college, Emily was headhunted to work at our headquarters, known for her sharp and capable work ethic. Despite her actress-level beauty, Emily had a cold, strong-willed personality with an incredibly high pride. It's like God has made winners like me, blessed with both brains and beauty, and losers like you who don't have anything, Emily often said. Emily had a strong sense of superiority as an elite and habitually looked down on employees of our branch, which she considered the bottom of the group, as if we were mere insects. Especially after learning that I only had a high school diploma, she openly mocked me. "So, Michael, you're just a lowly high school graduate. I saw your resume. You went to a fairly decent public high school with a high deviation score. You must have been a real failure there." She ridiculed me mercilessly. Each time Emily insulted or slandered me, I felt deeply hurt inside, but I endured it. After all, Emily was sent from the headquarters. If I reacted to Emily's provocations and responded angrily, it could lead to repercussions for our company as a subsidiary. Knowing this, we employees had no choice but to endure Emily's mean-spirited harassment. Then, one day, I was headed to work early in the morning, and on my way to the station, I encountered something unexpected. An elderly woman had collapsed on the side of the road. Perhaps due to the morning rush or general apathy, no one stopped to help the fallen elderly woman. I immediately rushed to her side and asked, "Are you okay? What happened?" The elderly woman had been lying on the ground in pain with her eyes closed, and she opened her eyes in response to my voice and weakly replied, "Oh, I suddenly felt dizzy and must have passed out on the street." After helping the elderly woman to her feet, she managed to stand up. Still concerned, I asked the elderly woman, "Would you like to go to the hospital?" Then she said, "No, let me contact my family first." So I used her phone to call her family and explained the situation. While waiting with the elderly woman, a taxi arrived carrying a middle-aged woman claiming to be her family member. I was relieved and handed the elderly woman over to her family. Checking the time, I realized I was significantly late. Totally late. I contacted my company to explain the situation and let them know I would be late, then headed back to the station. Upon arriving at work about 2 hours late, I was met by Emily, who had come from the headquarters. "Hey, Mr. Low-educated and good-for-nothing guy. What time do you think it is? If you're going to be useless, at least be punctual. Trash will always be trash." Emily scolded me without even asking for an explanation. After that, Emily continued to torment me with her nasty remarks, but I gritted my teeth and endured it. I just have to endure. This woman is trying to provoke me on purpose to bring down this department. I thought to myself, continuing my work patiently. That afternoon, while still bearing the brunt of my hardships, I received a phone call from an unexpected person. It was a call I could never have anticipated. Months passed, and a new fiscal year began. I was transferred from the branch I had worked at since joining the company. I had been reassigned to work at the headquarters. As I made my rounds greeting people in the department I was assigned to at the headquarters, I happened to witness a scene. Emily was scolding her subordinates with an arrogant attitude. Emily's title was the office manager of this office floor, which included the department I was assigned to. I discreetly observed her reprimanding her subordinates and later on interviewed them and others around the office after she left. It turned out that Emily was notorious at the headquarters for her arrogant attitude towards her subordinates and her relentless pursuit of even the smallest mistakes, resulting in a very poor reputation. Most of her subordinates were stressed and harbored discontent. I returned to my assigned department and was working when Emily, who had business with the section chief, came in and spotted me. "Why is a useless employee from a bottom-tier branch here at the headquarters?" she bluntly asked. I respectfully reiterated my reason for being at the headquarters to Emily. "I've been transferred here starting this month, as per the headquarters orders." Emily reacted with exaggerated disbelief, saying, "You're just a high school graduate, right? You're supposed to have a college degree to work at the headquarters. How did someone like you get transferred here? Unbelievable," and reluctantly accepted the fact. However, things got worse from there. From that day on, Emily started treating me as if I were one of her subordinates. She would demeaningly call me, "Hey, undereducated guy," or "Mr. High School Diploma," and started dumping menial tasks on me, like making coffee or filing documents. At times, she even ordered me to clean the women's restroom. It was a clear act of harassment. Eventually, Emily started assigning me chores even during my lunch breaks. I refused, which seemed to hurt her pride, and she left with a harsh parting shot. "I can have someone as uneducated and lowly like you fired anytime I want. Keep that in mind." Watching her walk away, I muttered to myself, it might be time to make a move, and made a call to someone. The next day, President Johnson of the company, claiming to be on an inspection tour, came to the floor where my department was located. Emily was the first to obsequiously greet him. Her usual domineering attitude replaced with an insincere charm that almost made me nauseous. "She's like a person with a double personality," I thought, disgusted by her two-faced behavior. Emily tried to curry favor with Mr. Johnson. "Yesterday, I visited your office, but it seemed you were on a call and we couldn't speak. I've noticed you are often giving work instructions or engaging in negotiations over the phone recently, and I truly admire your dedication to work. I hope to emulate that as well." Despite her fawning over Mr. Johnson, he soon spotted me and approached to greet me warmly. "Mr. Michael Sanders, the new president. We've spoken on the phone several times, but this is our first face-to-face meeting. Welcome to the headquarters." I responded, "Thank you. I've had the chance to observe everyone's hard work here since yesterday. I look forward to working with all of you." Upon hearing our exchange, Emily's face turned ashen. "New president, what do you mean? This high school graduate?" she stammered in disbelief. Mr. Johnson frowned at her interjection and sternly reprimanded her. "Emily, watch your language." He then proceeded to explain to a stunned Emily the surprising truths. This company was originally founded by my father. Due to a traffic accident that left him severely disabled, Mr. Johnson took over his duties. I was placed in a branch for training to assess my abilities as the founder's son. Mr. Johnson calmly explained these surprising truths, which were news to everyone except me. Emily, looking more shocked than anyone, was still not convinced by my sudden appointment as the new president and protested, "Even if that's the case, doesn't it seem odd? This is a large corporation with many branches and subsidiaries. Just because he's the founder's son, handing over the presidency to someone who hasn't even graduated from college is absurd." "Enough, Emily. Your discriminatory insults could constitute slander. Show some respect." Mr. Johnson scolded her firmly. He then calmly added more details. He explained that he had made the decision considering my character. The elderly lady I helped during my commute while at the branch was actually Mr. Johnson's mother, and upon learning this fact, he reached out to my father. Then, the details of how my character and capabilities were reevaluated, leading to the offer of the presidency, were thoroughly explained to both Emily and the other employees. According to Mr. Johnson, the board of directors and executive committee had already unanimously approved my appointment as the new president, with only the formal announcement at the shareholders' meeting remaining. Hearing this, Emily stood frozen in shock, while the rest of the employees erupted into applause. They congratulated me, saying, "Congratulations on your new appointment as president, and we're looking forward to working with you, President Sanders." I thanked Mr. Johnson and the employees, then said, "Thank you, everyone. I'm looking forward to working with all of you as well." Then I turned to Emily with a serious expression. Unable to rebut, I warned Emily, "I've compiled all the verbal abuse and harassment you've inflicted on your subordinates. Be aware that Mr. Johnson has been informed of your unacceptable behavior, so prepare yourself." Mr. Johnson added, "Emily, a special investigation team is currently examining your deplorable treatment of subordinates. You can expect severe disciplinary action to follow." Upon hearing that, Emily let out a loud "ah" as she looked up at the ceiling, then collapsed to the floor from her knees. Several weeks later, the punishment for Emily following the investigation report was announced. She was dismissed from her position as a disciplinary action. The investigation team detailed Emily's harassment of her subordinates and branch employees, which was found to be grossly abnormal and constituted severe violations of human rights. Furthermore, it was discovered that several individuals had resigned due to mental and physical health issues stemming from the harassment. Some of them are still unable to reintegrate into society due to the deep psychological scars inflicted by Emily. Emily had not physically assaulted anyone, but in terms of inflicting significant psychological harm, she was undeniably a criminal. Although Emily was dismissed and left the company, that was not the end. Victims of her cruel harassment, who had been forced to resign, filed lawsuits against Emily personally, demanding compensation for their suffering. As one person took legal action, other victims who had previously suffered in silence began to speak out, leading to multiple lawsuits against Emily and dragging her into a quagmire. This news eventually became a rumor and reached Emily's parents. They denounced her as a disgrace to the family and ultimately disowned her. Dismissed and with no income, Emily quickly depleted her savings and assets from her days as an elite employee and fell into debt due to legal and compensation expenses. Although she attempted to find employment, her reputation, tarnished by the lawsuits related to her malicious harassment, preceded her, and she was rejected from elite positions. While there were some opportunities for lower-level positions or in small companies, her unyielding elite mentality and excessive pride led to repeated rejections during interviews. Once living in a luxurious high-rise condo, Emily was eventually forced to move to a cheap, run-down apartment. Now, she lives in fear of debt collectors' knocks and threats, confined to her dilapidated apartment. Hearing this through the grapevine, I realized the truth of karma. Emily's current situation is dire, but I can't find it in me to feel sorry for her. After all, she inflicted far greater pain, humiliation, and bitterness on many vulnerable people. For the rest of her life, the only path left for her is to deeply reflect and live with the consequences of her actions. Each time I reflect on Emily's downfall, I use it as a moment to introspect and evaluate myself. Am I being harsh to anyone? Am I using words or actions that could hurt someone? Am I doing anything that could demotivate our employees? These questions serve as my motivation to always check that the environment at our organization allows everyone to work comfortably. Taking Emily's actions as a cautionary tale, I continue to strive for improvements in our company's environment, guided by the principle, one must not judge others based on their background, education, or personal likes and dislikes. Just quit the chatter and get those documents sorted on my desk. You're out of here. Not a single word of mine was heard. Only a barrage of insults filled the air. Seeing me speechless, Tyler, the director, leaned back in his chair with a smug look of victory. Well, now I've got to clean up your mess. Hurry up and bring me all the paperwork you've dealt with so far. An unjust dismissal notice, and I'm not even allowed to hand over important client accounts. Watching Tyler lounging in his chair smugly, I felt as if a taut string inside me had suddenly snapped. Understood. I'll gather the documents and then I'll leave. We'll handle the minor details. Just hand over the documents and pack up your stuff quickly. You're in the way of work. Tyler seemed eager to get rid of me as soon as possible. Fine, I'll leave right away. Enjoy the hardships I've endured all these years to the fullest. My name is Mike. I work in the sales department of a major staffing agency. After graduating from high school, I joined this company right away. I started my career as a contract employee and, recognized for my achievements, I passed the evaluation to become a full-time employee. Even as a full-time employee, I continued to work diligently, eventually climbing up to the position of manager. Cherish connections with people is my motto, and I spend my days developing my team members, still making sales calls with them whenever I have time. I want them to see and learn from the experience I've accumulated. All the client companies I currently handle are ones with which I have long-standing relationships. They are all companies I secured contracts with from scratch, and thanks to the trust we've built over time, we still sign regular contracts. There's the grumpy President Harrison, but when the 10th-year contract was concluded, he showed his generous side, saying, "After all, it's all about people." Lately, I've been making sales calls mostly with the newbie, Alex. He's still inexperienced, so his work as a salesperson requires close attention, but he's compassionate and has a good manner. I'm excited to see him grow, potentially becoming a leading figure in the sales department. One day, I planned a long vacation for my 10th wedding anniversary to go on an overseas trip with my wife. I've been away from home often due to business entertainments, causing my wife a lot of trouble. The members of the sales department have grown to the point where they can handle their work even in my absence for a few weeks. So, I decided to take a long vacation with peace of mind. Brandon, the director, readily agreed, and I devoted myself to work while preparing so that my subordinates wouldn't be inconvenienced during my vacation. Life-changing encounters come unexpectedly. It happened the day before my long-awaited vacation. Brandon's chronic illness worsened, leading to his hospitalization with no clear prognosis for discharge. Tyler Campbell was brought in from another department as the acting director in his place. Informed about the hospitalization by Bill, the executive officer, we started working with Tyler from that day. I'm Tyler, transferred from the administration department. I felt a bit uneasy about his lethargic attitude, but I figured it was just a tension of being in a new department, so I didn't dwell on it too much. For anything related to sales, consult Mike, the manager here. He's our ace, so he'll surely teach you a lot. When I was patted on the shoulder and told I'm counting on you by Bill, I felt my spine straighten. With the change in director, the workplace atmosphere was bound to undergo a significant transformation. I wanted to make sure not to stress my subordinates too much. Tyler, nice to meet you. I'm Mike. Looking forward to working together. I reached out for a handshake, but Tyler did not uncross his arms. Yeah, I don't care if you're the sales ace or whatever, but I can't stand incompetent employees or inefficient work. Just by looking at your subordinates, it's clear what kind of ace you are. Try to put even a single scratch on my title as director, and you'll find yourself out of here. I was at a loss for words at Tyler's provocative greeting. The possibility of what might happen next made my chest tighten. Everyone in the sales department works hard, sweating every day and doing their best. My sales team is also learning the job while making rounds with me. Everyone here is a respectable employee who takes responsibility for their work, so don't worry. I was infuriated to have my subordinates called incompetent, so I replied with a bit of sarcasm. What a ridiculous answer. Hard work is the same as incompetence that doesn't yield results. Well, it'll be clear soon enough just by observing the subordinates. Though I was itching to retort to his arrogant remarks, I remembered something crucial. I was about to take a long vacation and would be away for a while. Tyler, I apologize for the inconvenience so soon after your arrival to this department. I will be on paid leave starting tomorrow. Tyler frowned for a moment, then relaxed his mouth as if he had thought of something. I have already negotiated with the clients regarding the projects during my vacation, and the subsequent negotiations have been scheduled for after my return. In case of an emergency, I have asked Alex to contact me and handle it. Taking paid leave at a time like this must be nice to be the ace. Well, fine. I'll take a good look at how your subordinates work in the meantime. If anything goes wrong, you'll take responsibility, right? Tyler provocatively challenged me with a scheming look. It was regrettable to leave my subordinates behind, but canceling my leave now would only inconvenience them and my wife. I decided to trust my subordinates. Yes, I will take full responsibility for anything that happens. Tyler smiled smugly and sank deep into his chair. After everyone had left, I considered the risks that might occur during my absence and created a manual document so that my subordinates could handle them, leaving a copy on each of their desks. 2 weeks later, I safely returned from my overseas trip and my long vacation ended. I had told Alex to contact me immediately if anything happened, but the lack of any news during the 2 weeks made me anxious. And then, on my first day back at work, arriving earlier than usual, I found Alex looking haggard with dark circles under his eyes. Alex, what happened to you, looking so worn out? Mike, you're back today, right? Actually, I think I made a mistake with a quotation. I'm currently rushing to correct it. Tyler said I'd be fired if I don't redo the quotation before he arrives. My worst fears had come true. But even if Alex made a mistake with the quotation, the final review and decision should have been Tyler's responsibility. Without Tyler's approval, the quotation wouldn't have been sent to the client. Did you show that quotation to Tyler? The final decision is up to him, so it shouldn't be your responsibility. What do you mean? Tyler said that since it's a regular client, his final review wasn't necessary, and he sent me out on the sales call without it. Looking at the quotation, I felt a pang of anxiety. This was for a client company with a difficult President Harrison. He is strict about time and manners and would never forgive such a simple mistake. I had always taken great care to ensure not a single error from the beginning of our contract. Final reviews are mandatory. Didn't I write it in red in the manual I left on everyone's desk? Manual? What manual? It turned out that no one knew about the manual I had prepared and left on each desk the day before my vacation. I immediately had a hunch. Could Tyler have disposed of the manual? While I was pondering this, Tyler arrived at work. "Oh, finally back. We had a tough time while you were gone. Especially your promising newcomer messed things up big time." Tyler started complaining about the subordinates the moment he saw me, so I kept silent. After he finished his litany of complaints, I finally spoke up. "Tyler, to prevent my subordinates from struggling, I left a manual on everyone's desk. It even mentions that your final review is mandatory. Weren't you aware of it?" "Manual? What's that?" The one who neglected the final review was Alex. He went on the sales call without showing it to me, causing this mess. Thanks to him, I had to apologize. Tyler's voice grew increasingly agitated. Looking at Alex's face, he was pale, staring at Tyler in disbelief. I was immediately convinced that Alex wouldn't make such a simple mistake. I can hardly believe that Alex would take a quotation to a client without the final review. He said he tried to get confirmation from you but was told it wasn't necessary. Don't you remember that? What? You're saying it's my confirmation mistake that led to the wrong quotation being sent to the client? That's preposterous. Incompetents only know how to blame others. How are you the sales ace if you can't even prevent such a trivial mistake? Tyler's tirades intensified. There's no proof I placed the manuals on everyone's desks, nor evidence to clear Alex's false accusation. Arguing further seemed futile. I believe what Alex says. However, there's no evidence that you are covering anything up. The whereabouts of the manuals I placed on the desks are also unknown. Please wait until I find the evidence. I showered him with words akin to a declaration of war and returned to work. You've made a fool of me time and again. You'll regret going against me. With that, Tyler disappeared somewhere. While catching up on accumulated work, I pondered how to address the false accusation regarding the quotation. Alex kept apologizing to me, looking remorseful. If you believe you did the right thing, stand tall. It's okay, I believe in you. For now, let's take the correct quotation and apologize to the client. I took Alex with me to apologize to the client concerning the quotation. Having informed them in advance about my long vacation and having made several visits with Alex, we managed to get their understanding for this incident. Mr. Harrison said as we were leaving, I judge anyone who makes even a single small mistake as someone who lacks respect for others. It's a phrase he often repeated to me. With my shoulders slumped and gaze lowered, Mr. Harrison continued to speak to me. But Mike, you hadn't made a single mistake in these 10 years, so I decided to overlook it this time. With those parting words, he returned to his office. It wasn't a contract termination, thankfully. Thank you so much, Mike. Alex's relief and trembling voice painfully convey his emotions. It's been a good experience. Let's make sure to cover for each other so this doesn't happen again. I hope we can somehow maintain a good relationship with Tyler. I patted Alex on the shoulder, offering words of consolation. However, upon returning to the company, the situation had worsened. Summoned by Tyler, I was given a shocking notification. What do you mean? That means Alex is fired. I don't need incompetent employees who don't admit their faults and blame me instead. Tyler's selfish reasoning infuriated me further. That's an unfair dismissal. I'll talk to the higher-ups about this. As I tried to walk away, Tyler said, I've already spoken to my father. You can't claim ignorance. My father is Vice President, Mr. Campbell. You and the incompetent newbie have crossed me. Since you seem to be favored as the ace, I spared you and fired the newbie instead, he said, revealing Alex's dismissal notice. Tyler's barbaric actions sent shivers down my spine. I finally realized that he applies pressure through power to anyone who opposes him. Please retract Alex's dismissal. I'll ensure nothing tarnishes Tyler's reputation from now on. Just please retract the dismissal. I pleaded desperately with Tyler. My pride was nothing compared to unjustly fired Alex. Don't think your groveling will calm my anger. Incompetent tastes. I've always hated pretentious hypocrites like you, claiming to be well-liked. Don't make me laugh. You're just a low-educated incompetent trying to please everyone. That's when I finally understood. Tyler disliked me personally. As long as I remained in this department, the harassment towards me would never stop. And it would inevitably affect my subordinates too. Tyler, do you remember the promise you made on the day you were transferred here? I promised to take responsibility for my subordinates. His tone changed abruptly from the tirades he had been hurling at me. What, you're saying you'll resign instead? If it means Alex won't be fired, I'll take responsibility. My words seemed to irk Tyler even more as he raised his voice. So, it's your fault for leaving your incompetent subordinates while you were off. You're taking full responsibility, right? We don't need incompetence and low education in our company. You got your wish. You're fired. I accepted the dismissal notice, fully prepared for everything. After briefly greeting my subordinates and attempting to at least hand over the client accounts, just stop the chatter and get those documents sorted on my desk. You've got no place in this company anymore. Tyler's tirades echoed without listening to a word I said. Seeing my speechless figure, Tyler leaned back in his chair with a satisfied look as if he had won. Well, now I've got to clean up your mess. Bring me all the paperwork you've handled so far. An unfair dismissal notice, and I wasn't even allowed to hand over important client accounts. Watching Tyler smugly leaning back in his chair, I felt as if a tightly wound string inside me had snapped. Understood. I'll gather the documents and leave. We'll handle the minor stuff. Just hand over the documents and quickly pack up your things. You are getting in the way of work. It seemed Tyler was eager to get rid of me as soon as possible. Fine, I'll leave right now. Let him fully experience the hardships I've endured. A few days after being handed the dismissal notice, the situation took a sudden turn. While I was resting at home, I received a call from Alex. Hey, Alex, how are you doing? Is something wrong? The unusual atmosphere was palpable even through the phone. Mike, it's terrible. The clients you've been regularly maintaining contracts with are one after another filing for cancellations. My eyes widened. The contracts I had secured with those clients were worth hundreds of thousands of dollars each. What, if they do that, the company's profits will be almost. Yes, as far as we know now, nearly $1 million in contracts are being canceled. There aren't many clients with whom we have regular contracts. Moreover, in a staffing agency, once clients no longer need personnel, we're no longer of use to them. To renew annual contracts, we had to constantly present how we could contribute to their profits and work beyond the typical scope of a staffing agency to improve their business alongside them. We transitioned from merely sending personnel to becoming partners, hand in hand. It was crucial to regularly visit the clients, understand their current needs, how we could increase their profits, and empathize with the challenges faced by the president and the company. As the sales manager, I valued this above all and made it a point to visit the clients myself. Now, it was all falling apart. There was only one other thing that came to mind. With that thought, I headed straight to the office. Upon entering the floor, I saw the staff bustling about, busy with phone calls. When I looked for Tyler, he was deeply slouched in his chair, seemingly lost in thought. He probably couldn't find any solution. Tyler, what's going on here? He looked up in surprise as he heard my voice. Hey, Mike, why are you here? You're supposed to be fired. Who let this guy in? Tyler's shout echoed throughout the office. The staff looked around in fear. I informed him, if things continue this way, all contracts will be terminated. leading to significant losses for the company. We need Mike's help. Alex raised his voice to Tyler like I'd never heard before. What an outrageous act. He's no longer a manager. We don't need help from someone who's been fired from the company. That's what incompetents think. First, tell me what happened. I heard all the clients filing for cancellations are the ones I had regular contracts with. I have a responsibility here. Tyler seemed taken aback by my words. That's right. Yes, it's all because I had to clean up your mess that we're in this situation. If you had completed your work properly before leaving, none of this would have happened. Your departure has caused a huge loss to the company's profits. I was astounded by Tyler's absurd excuses. Tyler, blaming others is something incompetents do, right? That phrase fits you perfectly now. Hearing my words, Tyler's face turned red, and he murmured to himself while sinking back into his chair. So, Alex, can you explain the situation? While Tyler was disheartened, I focused on understanding the situation. According to Alex, the lack of detailed handover from me led to miscommunications with the clients. Negotiations weren't as smooth as before, resulting in a barrage of criticisms from them. Suddenly, the clients were dealing with unfamiliar staff members without any explanation, and to make matters worse, Tyler later visited them, nonchalantly proposing increases in contract fees. Understandably, the clients were furious about the sudden talk of raising fees. Despite the backlash, Tyler continued to visit clients, only to propose increases in contract fees. And today, just before the contracts were up for renewal, there was a flood of cancellations. Tyler, you might not have known, but many of the presidents of my clients are difficult people, especially when it comes to delicate matters like money. You need a strong relationship of trust. If it were me, I'd be trembling. As I reflected, the hard work I had put in over the years flashed before my eyes. That's not my concern. Sure, I may be less educated and less capable in your eyes, but in exchange, I've always valued connections with people more than anything. It's by respecting these relationships that I've managed to generate profits that now shape the foundations of our company. Don't you dare act all high and mighty. This is my company. Don't you oppose me. Tyler's voice grew even harsher. At that moment, the phone rang. The internal phone on Tyler's desk started ringing. Tyler's body trembled slightly as he hesitantly picked up the phone. This is Tyler. Yes, right now, yes. Tyler's voice became fainter and fainter. Surely, the top management had been informed of the serious situation. Such a significant loss would obviously impact the company's management. Mike, too, yes, he's here. As expected, my name was mentioned. Most of the clients in question were mine, so it was inevitable. And from the way Tyler spoke, could it be he kept my dismissal a secret? Hey, Mike, there's an emergency executive meeting. Come with me. Tyler shouted as if venting his anger at me. Quietly following Tyler, I prepared myself for the upcoming Q&A session in the meeting. The emergency meeting took place in a large conference room. Tyler and I took a moment before opening the door. Bill and even our CEO, Mr. Richardson, were in attendance. Tyler, we'd like you to explain the circumstances leading to this situation. Tyler's expression changed, and he began to speak in a feeble voice. While Mike was on extended leave, a problem arose with a quotation from a new employee, and when I reported it to Mike, he accused me of being responsible. I was stunned by Tyler's false confession. Mike then went absent without leave. In the meantime, I was advancing negotiations with his clients, but without any handover from him. The trust from our clients crumbled. Tyler, that's because you. I couldn't hold back and interrupted. I apologize for the inconvenience caused by my inadequate guidance. Tyler apologized, cutting off any further discussion. I was utterly appalled by Tyler's responses, all aimed at self-preservation until the very end. I see, Mike, is this true? Hearing Bill's question, Tyler glared at me. Even if Tyler was the son of Vice President, Mr. Campbell, I had already been dismissed. There was no reason for me to cover for him now. No, not a single thing he said is true. I then recounted everything, from Tyler's tyrannical behavior and unfair dismissal to his barbaric negotiations. Vice President, Mr. Campbell, stood up in disbelief at such selfish behavior. After finishing, I added one last thing. Therefore, I am no longer a manager here. I am a former employee who was unjustly dismissed. The executives began voicing their opinions amidst the conflicting accounts. At that moment, there was a knock on the door. "Excuse me," a familiar voice said as Alex entered. "I apologize for interrupting the meeting. I am Alex from the sales department. I have brought evidence to prove Mike's innocence." He then took out a recorder. Alex had been recording Tyler's actions and words during my absence. When I returned to work after my days off, during the rough negotiations, and even in today's interactions, everything was recorded. "Alex, how dare you do this? That's not my voice. It's different." But it was clearly Tyler's voice, unmistakable to anyone who heard it. After the recording was played, Vice President, Mr. Campbell, Tyler's father, stood up immediately. "I sincerely apologize for letting my foolish son conduct himself so poorly. He will be duly punished for his actions." He apologized profusely, not even glancing at Tyler. "What's going on? What's happening? Gaining up on me like this?" Tyler was slumped on the floor, crying out. In the eerie silence, there was another knock on the door. When Alex opened the door, there stood President Harrison, who was known for being hard to please and with whom we had a long-standing contract. "Why are you here?" Then, Vice President, Mr. Campbell, approached the door and spoke up. "He's a friend of mine. He was worried about Mike and contacted me today." Turns out, they were classmates. Given President Harrison's temperament, it had always been a secret that he was under contract with the staffing agency of Vice President, Mr. Campbell, but my sudden disappearance had concerned him, prompting him to reach out. "I sincerely apologize for my abrupt change in handling and my disrespectful behavior." Touched by President Harrison's concern despite his challenging personality, I apologized for tears for the rude negotiations. He mentioned that if I would return as a responsible person, he would renew the contract. Apparently, he had just arrived when Alex came in and had overheard everything. Knowing I had been unfairly dismissed, he decided to recontract with us. "Would you come back as our star player?" I nodded eagerly. With Tyler speechless, applause and cheers erupted from everyone. Then, I shook hands with Alex, expressing my gratitude for his brave disclosure. Afterward, I visited each client who had sent a contract termination notice to apologize with a gift. I explained the company's recent scandal and secured recontracting under the condition that I would return as their representative. Some companies refuse contract renewals due to scandals, but most have agreed to re-sign, each of them saying the same thing. They all said, "We want to entrust it to you because it's you, Mike." I might be considered low-educated and incompetent for only having a high school diploma. But as President Harrison said, the future of a company is built on relationships. Thanks to Tyler, I've come to want to spread this belief even more. As for Tyler, he was stripped of his position and suspended indefinitely. Vice President, Mr. Campbell, who did not overlook Tyler's selfish and tyrannical behavior, said he wouldn't rehire him as a full-time employee even if he wished to return. With his punishment, Tyler faces a thorny path to social reintegration. But perhaps, learning from this and experiencing the warmth of those who reach out, his life might brighten a bit. Despite being seen as incompetent and low-educated, I've managed to climb this far. Time has passed since that day, and Alex, once a newbie, is rapidly advancing as the next ace in sales. As for me, I remained a manager for a while but was promoted to director after repeated recommendations from the executives. Although I feel a bit shy being called a director, my work style hasn't changed. Even with the new title, I continue to take newcomers and subordinates to clients, discussing the future of the company with challenging presidents even today.
He used to draw manga all the time at school. Even during breaks, he'd cling to his desk, and he was in the manga club too. Total geek. His life revolved around his desk and the world of manga. Oh, you guys are a little put off? Don't mean it that way. And I'm glad you're interested in him. I was looking at David, who was talking with a grin, or rather, I was looking behind him. I could see the bride approaching quickly. Hey, there you are. Long time no see, David said as he approached me. He was a classmate from high school. What was he doing here? He was smiling, but I wasn't happy at all. I've missed you. I heard you hang out here often, so I came by. I was at my usual cafe. You haven't changed at all. You've always been a bookworm, but you're still a loner, surfing the internet? David looked at my laptop on the table and grinned. Meeting someone? No, I came to see you. Saying that, he sat in the open seat in front of me. I wanted to give you this. It's for my wedding. You have to come. I've invited all my classmates. We even planned the after party. So let's all have a good time together after all these years. Don't be messing around. You have to come. We all agreed to attend each other's weddings and funerals, right? It's a full course meal at a first-class hotel. You wouldn't even have a chance unless it was for a wedding. The after party will be fun because the bride's friends will be there, and since she is a flight attendant, there will be a lot of glamorous female guests. After saying everything he wanted, David left. I didn't even feel like opening the envelope and just sat there. My name is Sean. I'm 25 years old. David was my classmate, but we were never close. To be honest, I disliked him. He was smart. His father was a lawyer and pushed him to follow the same path, so he was always busy with tutors and cram school. But with no choice in his future and a strict academic schedule, he must have been under a lot of stress. I often became his stress outlet. He intentionally dropped my lunchbox during lunchtime. He forced his class duties on me. He borrowed my notebook and never returned it to me. The list was endless. I often ended up as teacher's assistant. No one wanted the job, so they pushed each other to do it. At those times, he would successfully push everything on me. Being teacher's assistant was just a fancy term for a convenient handyman. The teacher would call me to distribute handouts. In the classroom, the teacher would instruct me to collect homework assignments from the students. He would annoy me by saying he didn't get it, or make me wait by saying he would file it later. In short, he was a messy man. But since he had good grades, the teachers went easy on him. In a school where academics were prioritized, smart guys were popular. Teenage girls didn't mind his difficult personality, they even thought it was good because he was not too perfect. After looking through the wedding invitation, I contacted Mike. Mike was also a classmate and often supported me when David targeted me. If only David weren't around, school would have been fun. Because of him, the bad memories outweighed the good ones. I saw David today. For his wedding, right? Unbelievable. He used to look down on us with his elite attitude as the law school student. And now he reaches out to us only at a time like this. So, are you going? I wanted to avoid it, but all the friends I was close to were going. They were actually waiting for my call so we could go together. They seemed to worry that David might not invite me alone. This is a great chance to see everyone for a while. If you're not feeling it, you can leave early. Both of us had been busy with work and hadn't seen each other in a while. Weddings and after parties wouldn't be the place to talk to the groom personally so much. We decided to attend together. Outside the cafe window, students walked by. In high school, I used to draw manga all the time. I was even in the manga club. David was not only a good student, but he was also good at sports. I was called a pussy and gloomy for staying in my seat even during lunch break. I thought I could just attend out of obligation and then never see him again. That's what I believed. It was a grand wedding ceremony on the day. 2 generations of lawyers, father and son, would be elite in the eyes of society. David must have been proud of it. Our table was filled with high school friends, and we enjoyed ourselves without paying much attention to the groom. None of us were married yet. We were interested in the ceremony, but also wondered if it had to be so elaborate. The bride and groom frequently left for changing dresses. From a classic wedding dress and white tuxedo to the colorful evening dress and matching formal tuxedo, and even changed to beautiful kimono dresses. They looked like dress-up dolls. During those breaks, professional musicians played the piano, violin, or sang, but we hardly listened. Normally, their friends and family would entertain the guests or even themselves, but since the host spent so much money, we don't have to worry about it. Mike chuckled. After all, the main focus of the ceremony on that day was the bride and the groom. There was a cake cutting, a rice shower, and a bouquet toss. Their frequent dress changings made the ceremony last over hours, and honestly, we were getting bored. We moved to the venue for the after party, but then had to wait over an hour for it to start. The bride and groom hadn't arrived yet. They must have been busy greeting family members and changing clothes. However, some of our friends had come from out of town. They were anxious about the end time. When it finally started, the party was dull, a far cry from the wedding. People were sparse and the party games were not exciting. Originally there were about 40 people, but 1 or 2 left during the wait. The remaining crowd was mostly women. I didn't want to participate in the games, so I just watched. The prizes were unimpressive, and the atmosphere was awkward. Food was limited to snacks and soft drinks. We were fine since we had just had the full course meal, but those who only came for the after party must have been disappointed. Moreover, technical issues prevented the prepared movie from playing, which was a disaster. We weren't interested in David's movie and thought it would be better to end quickly since it started late, but the bride, Lisa, was visibly upset. We were planning to slip out quietly and go for a drink. David, probably trying to salvage the awkward atmosphere, suddenly grabbed the microphone and started speaking. "Thanks for coming to our after party. You all came here looking to meet someone, right? I hope you find happiness like we did. Let me introduce each of the guys here, so ladies, pay attention." He started introducing each person one by one. I had a bad feeling. What could he possibly introduce about me? We hadn't kept in touch at all. He introduced his lawyer friends and college buddies first. When it came to us from high school, he listed everyone as company employees, adding titles like soccer team captain or student council member from those days. Finally, it was my turn. The last one to be introduced is Sean. This guy spent all his school days drawing manga. He'd cling to his desk even during breaks. And he was in the manga club, a total geek. He hated PE and wasn't good at sports. His life revolved around his desk and the world of manga. That's the kind of classmate he was. Oh, you guys are a little put off? Don't mean it that way, and I'm glad you're interested in him. It's not like he's a shut-in. He made it out here today, and he goes to Café Salon, too. Right, Sean? I was looking at David grinning and talking, or rather, I was looking behind him. I could see Lisa approaching quickly. And that was the moment David noticed her presence and turned around. Surprisingly, Lisa's slap burst into David's face. It wasn't just one shot, it was 4 round shots back and forth. Caught off guard, David staggered and leaned against the table with the food. Lisa picked up the microphone that fell from David's hand. A murmur spread through the crowd. "What are you doing? You should be asking yourself that." Holding the microphone, Lisa began to speak to us almost like a campaign speech, half yelling. "Everyone, can you believe that I knew nothing about today's ceremony? I don't know if it was a secret bridal or a surprise. But I feel like I'm the only one who was set up, even involving my family. The dresses, the kimono, the bouquet, none of it was my taste. Even the message to parents was not something I came up with on my own. It was all staged. This is supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime event. Yet everything was decided without my input. I was about to lose my mind with anger. But since you all came, dealing with outfits and gifts and all, I endured. There are my parents' work associates, bosses, and other important people here. So I thought I could just get through the day. But I'm done. I can't marry this man. Lisa, what are you talking about? For the wedding, you spent your parents' money extravagantly, but for the after-party, you rented this tiny room and left everything irresponsibly to others because you didn't want to spend your own money. The food and drinks are also cheap, and it's obvious you're trying to keep it within the budget. It's incredibly rude to the guests. And I've been listening to you insult people, calling them geek and shut-ins. Is that a jab at my sister? If you can openly mock guests, you definitely treat family even worse. I can't stand anything about this. I now know what she meant. It was about Lisa's message to her parents. In front of both families, the MC read out the message in a theatrical voice. There was a part of it in which she referred to her sister. I was wondering too if the part about respecting and loving her little sister who has become a shut-in is a big sister as much as ever should be read out at a place like this. Perhaps that message was a template edited to fit her family situation. David likely did it haphazardly, but it must have been unbearable for her family. No wonder she was angry. Elite lawyer, huh? Aren't lawyers supposed to fight injustice and help people with the power of law? Instead, you mock the weak. You have the knowledge but not the heart. Everyone, this wedding is off. I can't live with a man like this. Laugh at me all you want, but this is the end. In her puffy skirt, dressed like a pretty doll, the bride made her bombshell announcement. We were frozen, not knowing how to react. David slowly stood up, looking stunned as he listened, then spat out, "What are you talking about now?" Despite this, she just get out of here. I never want to see your face again, she said firmly into the microphone, and the groom left with a click of his tongue. Wait a minute, what about us? The bride was crying. Lisa, having said her piece, sighed deeply. Me and Mike, sitting with her between us, quietly glanced at each other and then looked down again. Oh, what's this? Suddenly, the bride noticed the gift bag at my feet. Oh, it's just a sample. Oh my gosh. I'm a fan of Karen. Why are there samples here? Is this going to be sold? Hey, look at this. It's a sample. I was frozen by the sudden turn of events. Her voice drew the bride's friends over in a crowd. Lisa took the microphone again. Everyone, are you hungry? Order whatever you like for delivery. I'll cover it. Don't worry about the gift money, I'll return it. Unlike him, I'm not cheap. Let's have some drinks and enjoy ourselves. With that, the breakup party began, with the MC running out to buy drinks and various deliveries arriving, turning it into a lively event. Getting back to the point, I draw webcomics under the pseudonym Blue Moon. In school, I used to draw fantasy stories, but as I ran out of ideas, I started drawing stories based on real life. My series was called Karen's Life Theater, featuring the same main character each time. Karen, a woman in her 30s, was the protagonist, and her profession changed with each storyline. She got caught in various injustices and absurdities, and unlike in real life, she stood up to her bosses and seniors, saying what needed to be said. This character resonated with women dealing with life's stresses. It started with Nurse Karen in a hospital, then Bride Karen dealing with in-laws, female office worker Karen getting bossed around at work, and now Flight Attendant Karen. Elderly patient hitting on nurses, crazy helicopter parents, a mother-in-law throwing away the meal that her son's wife was cooking. Airline passengers demanding to change seats. I had 3 older sisters, the eldest was a nurse, and the second was a flight attendant. The whole event that Karen was involved in were true stories I got from my own family. The young wife dealing with her tough mother-in-law was modeled after my mom. When I was listening to their stories and choosing the topics, I realized that talking was a stress reliever and that empathy was a powerful thing for people. My sisters, and especially my mom, would recount events in great detail, even from before I was born. My mom emphasized how indifferent my dad, or her husband, was during those times, which always made me uneasy. Because I never saw my mother as someone's wife. But the first-hand, real-life content resonated with women in similar situations, growing my fanbase. The world is full of injustices. In response, Karen clearly shouted out loud that something was no good, which seemed to clear the minds of those watching. Last year, in collaboration with a grocery store, Karen's Lunchbox series were released. Items included No More Overtime Bento, Too Much Odd Job Sushi Roll, and Don't Be Unreasonable Rice Ball, each with catchy slogans and the characters printed on them. Targeting female office workers, the calorie labeling was very precise, as well as the nutritional content that was missing. The TV commercials, reminiscent of each of the products, featured "Eat Up and Hang In There, Girls," and concluded with Karen's cheering. Megan, the youngest of my 4 older sisters, played a big role in promoting Karen. Megan and I were a year apart, and we were close to each other the most. When I was dealing with David, Megan was also struggling with classmates at school. Eventually, she stopped attending school and rarely left her room. My mom, struggling in her vulnerable position as a daughter-in-law, believed that relationships that could be avoided should be avoided. So she did not force Megan to attend school, but encouraged her to do what she was willing to work on. Megan chose crafts. She sewed clothes for dolls. Although it looked harder than making clothes for people to me, Megan skillfully used fabric scraps to create one-of-a-kind outfits. There was a story behind Megan's dedication to this hobby. There was a 7-year age gap between Megan and the eldest sister. And there was even a 5-year gap with the second sister. We often received hand-me-downs from our older sisters, and the doll Megan inherited was well-worn, with messy hair, a dirty face, and missing shoes. The dolls were in terrible shape, and I felt sorry for Megan, even though I was a little kid too, when she was told to play with them. However, this childhood sadness became Megan's motivation. Encouraged by our mom to pursue whatever she wanted, Megan cleaned the doll's face with nail polish remover and created the unique Karen doll. She matched the outfits to the manga I drew, adding accessories and recreating scenes in puppet shows, which she shared online. Gradually, she began to stage Karen's daily life in a way that only a woman could understand. Moreover, our older sisters joined in, acting out period cramps or dressing up to go out from messy rooms, creating videos that resonated with many. Women of all ages have experienced playing with dolls at least once. So the nostalgia and realism of the subject matter probably made it easy for them to take to it. This venture led Megan to connect with shop owners and doll makers, eventually starting her own online shop, Karen's Boutique. What Lisa found at my feet was a sample of Karen's second product line. Between the wedding and the after-party, I had a meeting with product planners in the hotel lobby. Then they gave me a sample. Karen's quote stickers. These were vinyl holders to be hung from bag handles. They featured Karen's face and catchy slogans printed on them. One destination, even if many paths. There's no younger day than today. If you need me, let me know. I will help you. I'm happy because of me. It's fun because of you. Knowledge is treasure, not just what you learn in school. Leaving on time is what makes a good employee. Dear customer, unreasonable demand for apology is a crime of coercion. No photos allowed, even if they're cute. All these phrases were crowdsourced online. There are various themes for Karen's quote stickers, some for boosting confidence, some for preventing harassment, and some for students preparing for exams. Each one aims to encourage the person carrying it. While these might not change real life, my intention was for them to serve as a brief moment of relief. This is great. The sticker Lisa held said, "Better alone than in bad company." There's no point in forcing yourself. It's my life, why should I care about appearances or what others think? I'll give it to you. I hope this will help you in your future life. Oh, I want one too. I submitted a catchphrase, but mine wasn't chosen. Before I knew it, the area was filled with women dressed up for the after-party, turning the scene into something like an autograph signing event. They were flight attendants, so they were probably more realistic to them. They even started offering more story ideas, inviting me for interviews. I told them I'd get in touch later to keep things manageable at the moment. You've got some nerve, I heard you kicked me out and had an autograph session, right? David was leaning back in his chair across from me. He arrived at the cafe an hour late. It wasn't that I wanted to meet him, He insisted on it, so I reluctantly waited. It had been about 2 weeks since the wedding. I hadn't been in contact with David at all since then. Yet here he was, accusing me right off the bat. I didn't kick you out, nor did I hold an autograph session. Don't lie to me. I heard you were the center of attention as soon as I left. If you say so, you should have stayed until the end. You abandoned the guests who came to celebrate you. The reception ran late. And the bride and groom arrived even later, dragging into the evening. Everyone was stuck with just snacks and soft drinks. The games couldn't start because there weren't enough people, the sound system was awful, there was no video, and the MC was terrible. Even Lisa was complaining. Don't talk about Lisa like you know her. Well, she's not your bride anymore, right? I can only call her by name. So, what's this all about? I'm telling you to stay away from Lisa. I haven't done anything. I heard you're trying to get close to her under the guise of work because she is beautiful, once working as the flight attendant. From whom? That's none of your business. I wondered why I had ever been afraid of this guy. David's bluster and bullying had no real basis. Back then, our teacher, Johnson, always favored him, so I gave up. I thought I couldn't win no matter what I said. He was just a student with good grades, nothing inside. I won't forgive Lisa. Who does she think I am, ruining my wedding? Do you know how much social credibility I've lost? I'll make her pay. I don't know how you can say that. What did you say? I sighed. The angrier and hotter David got, the more disgusted and cold I got. As a lawyer, you might find plenty of reasons to corner her, but she was the woman you wanted to marry, right? Shouldn't you be looking at what made her unhappy and what went wrong? You're supposed to be a lawyer. Finding mitigating circumstances even for those who've committed crimes. Yet you don't even show sympathy for the bride you hurt. You can't even acknowledge the fact that you hurt her. Are you trying to lecture me? She was angry because of your thoughtless words and selfish actions. You didn't listen to her and did whatever you wanted. You've always been like that, saying whatever you want without caring about how others feel. You're still living your life not knowing that it's not a good feeling, not only for the person you're talking to, but also for the people around you who are listening to you. Shut up. I came here to tell you. In the end, you're an incredibly smart guy, admired by teachers, and that's why you became a lawyer with extensive knowledge. But that's all you are. You can't empathize with people or adjust to their feelings. Suddenly, water splashed in my face, dripping from my cheek. Don't get cocky just because I'm listening quietly. Amazing. Even someone who knows the law can't control their temper. This would be assault, right? And if I catch a cold from this, it could be considered battery. I pointed at my wet phone on the table. If this phone breaks, you might be looking at property damage charges. You used to do this kind of stuff in high school too, didn't you? Back then. You didn't know the law, so you acted recklessly. But knowing the law isn't enough. Even lawyers lose their temper. Suddenly, a woman standing beside me offered a handkerchief. Lisa. What are you doing here? Did you guys set me up? Don't be ridiculous. How self-centered can you be? I was just meeting someone else here. I was sitting in the back. David turned around hastily. Behind him was a meeting room separated by a glass wall. The flight attendants from the other day were watching us. See, it was a setup. I was supposed to meet them here originally. That's why I first told you that today was not available due to another matter. But you insisted. So I agreed to meet you at the same place, just earlier. It's you who showed up an hour late and yet, no apology for being late. You call yourself a professional while you look down on others, calling them geek or something. How about taking a good look at your own behavior? Has anyone, even one person, complimented you on what you've done this time around? David stood up. Oh, running away again? You always pushed off unpleasant tasks onto others. Fine, go ahead. I didn't have any business with you anyway. Before you go, let me tell you something. I was not tricked by him anyway, and it has nothing to do with the breakup with you. I divorced you because I don't love you anymore. Got it? I can't stand the sight of you, David. If you want to sue me, go ahead. Your threats have been overheard by the staff at the venue. There's plenty of evidence. Honestly, it was a very emotionally distressing day for me. For a moment, David and Lisa glared at each other, but David dropped his gaze and left. Originally, the wedding was supposed to be 3 months later. Lisa had been going to the spa to prepare herself, and her colleagues supposed to take a day off on that day. But in a surprise move, she was suddenly turned into a bride at a hotel meeting for her birthday celebration. This was entirely David's idea. At first, even her family was against it. But it was an off-season for weddings, which made it cheaper. Having already received funds from his parents, David decided to move the date to save money. He staged a grand event, dragging everyone into his scheme to have the wedding on her birthday. On the surface, it seemed like a thoughtful gesture from the groom to surprise the bride, so everyone cooperated. But for the bride, it was a complete disaster. She didn't get to choose her dress, hairstyle, or any part of the ceremony. The wedding was supposed to be a special moment for the bride. Her friends had concerns. But it was ultimately the couple's decision, so they kept quiet. The frequent dress changes were special arrangement for the bride by David. But she seemed to be filled with humiliation as she had to keep laughing as she was forced to change dresses she didn't like. It wasn't supposed to be like this, she said every time she walked out of the venue. But David was forcing his way through with the same selfishness as ever. She continued to hold out, at least until the ceremony was over. She really wanted to cancel the after party. It was quite common for brides to be too tired for wedding. She wanted to cancel, even if she had to lie. But since David had planned to skim off some of the event fees, he insisted on bringing her to the after party. The two had a dispute, which delayed their arrival. Lisa, determined to endure until the end, finally exploded when she saw David mocking the guests in public. I was just caught in the middle and neither tricked her nor caused the breakup. And yet, making accusations against me was enough to make me want to sue him for defamation too. After David left, I moved to the meeting room where the flight attendants were waiting and began my interview, discussing their experiences. My eldest sister's similar job, and merchandise ideas. Despite their job requiring constant smiles, they were working in the confined space of an airplane with no escape. There was no right way to work in the customer service industry. One passenger might praise them for being attentive, while another might complain about being overly intrusive. Crying children, medical emergencies, bad weather. Every flight seemed to bring a new set of challenges. Delays weren't their fault, but complaints came straight at them. Moreover, behind the scenes, they had to pay more attention to their senior colleagues than they did to the passengers. Rumors traveled faster than jets. And they had to pay attention to other colleagues' feelings and sometimes took the blame for others' mistakes to keep the peace. Since they worked with different teams on each flight, they constantly had to rebuild relationships, which was exhausting. My sister often shared these kind of stories with me, making me feel sorry for them even when I see smiling flight attendants now. She used to be shocked by senior colleagues bad-mouthing passengers and co-workers. But now she was so used to it that she said it would be a disaster if she started doing it too. My sister's story like that made them sympathize with her, and then it would come back to me even more. I thought that it is because of this communication that I end up socializing with people and I draw manga. Nothing stabilized emotions like empathy. Lisa, too, decided to quit her job, fed up with the drama among the women. Despite her dream of joining the airline, she was filled with frustration, prompting her parents to suggest marriage. They introduced her to an elite lawyer through their connections, thinking it was a trustworthy profession. However, the secret wedding and subsequent handling of things showed such a lack of sincerity that even her parents were disappointed and apologized to her. Fortunately, they hadn't officially registered their marriage yet. Mike was thrilled to have met David's college friend at the after party, a lawyer, which broadened his network. Apparently, David was the same way in college. Despite attending for 6 years, only 2 friends were invited. One of whom left during the long wait. The other guy was looking bored, so Mike struck up a conversation with him while they ate delivery food. He was also a lawyer's son, attending in place of his father. It seemed that David only had relationships like that. Recently, through Mike's introduction, the 3 of us had drinks together and I decided to create a story featuring Karen as a lawyer. Incorporating legal education. David served as the basis for the villains in my comics. Thinking about how David would say or do certain things provided inspiration for me to create characters. Thinking about it, maybe all my hard work back then was paying off a little. Given the hardships he caused me, I would make good use of them. Lisa's sister, who had been troubled, changed after meeting Megan. She watched Megan's videos and became interested in the props which were used there, eventually working on making them herself. She particularly enjoyed creating miniature food, insisting on knowing the real thing, so Lisa took her out to try sweets and buy materials, slowly helping her become more active. Recently, she also started selling her artwork in Megan's online store. And the income she was able to generate seemed to have boosted her confidence. Megan planned to support her until she could manage her own shop. Half a year after the chaotic wedding, Lisa now works at a hotel front desk. While Lisa introduced her sister to Megan and I introduced Mike to a flight attendant who was a former colleague of hers, Lisa and I ended up dating. The hotel, frequented by many international guests, suits her well with her language skills and refined service training. It's less hectic than being a flight attendant, and the clientele is generally better, making her job more comfortable. However, every field has its own David. And then, this guy insisted that making him stand at the reception desk showed poor service. He claimed he was a regular and should be attended to in his room. He acted like a celebrity, but turned out to be just a rude old man. It was so disappointing. Lisa kept talking. As I listened to her, I mentally recreated her story with Karen. It must be an occupational hazard. So, he asked me to come to his room, so I asked to Chris, my supervisor, to come with us. But the guy got angry, insisting only I came along. Then Jason, the manager, quickly had 2 senior staff members on break wait by his room. We all opened the door together and said, "Please enjoy your stay," before closing the door. Oh my, you never know what might happen if you go alone. You have to be careful. Hey, there is a cafe nearby that serves delicious cakes. Let's go. Even though we just had a meal and I was full, women always seem to crave sweets. On a sweets tour with her sister, Lisa became obsessed with the allure of sweets. I've been taken there often, too, so I have more chances to eat something sweet. Eventually I'm going to have to draw Karen struggling to lose weight.